This is what they call the main stroll. Just about anything you want to find or that you can look for, you can definitely find it in this area. You're gonna get them on this side so they can breathe, okay? And then just take like this part of your finger and go right to the sternum, whether it's male or female, and massage it and start talking to the person. And that's called stimulation. And what usually happens is they will come around. We have naloxone. We don't do the ice water. We don't do anything.
What is naloxone?
Naloxone is an antagonist, meaning that if we were able to distribute it in the neighborhood, or if I had it that day, all I had to do is just find the biggest muscle, arm, hip, pop it in them, push it, bring them back just like that.
Naloxone is a prescription medication. It's what's called an opioid antagonist, and that means that it blocks the effects of opioids in the brain. So it essentially knocks out the opioid from the brain's receptor, almost immediately reversing the effects of the opioid. The main medical concern that opioids cause is a depression of respiration. It slows down your breathing, and in some people, unfortunately, it slows it down so much that breathing stops. As long as that drug can get to the brain, that drug will knock out the opioid from the brain, put the person into almost immediate opioid withdrawal, and reverse the depression. One of the problems with naloxone is that although it's not a controlled substance, it has no effect except to this opioid antagonist effect, except that it reverses the effects of opioids. It doesn't do anything else. If a person isn't on an opioid and they take naloxone, it will have absolutely no effect on them. But it is still a prescription drug, and like all prescription drugs, it can only be accessed via someone who has prescribing privileges. In the United States, unfortunately, it's often rather difficult to see a doctor or a mid-level practitioner with prescribing privileges. So a lot of people who could be helped by accessing the drug can't access it.
And the thing is that I had the dope man standing over me the whole time. And he basically told me, get the out of here. Wow. Is what he said. I picked her up, I took her to the next house, which was a vacant porch, to try to finish working on her. He was still following me. He said, no, take the on up the road further. I'm giving you the exact language he told me. So we picked her up again, took her 3 more houses up the street. He said, no, that ain't far enough. He made me bring her all the way down on the corner. Okay? And I told him I was gonna call 911. He knew I was gonna call 911. By then I had brought her back, and we had her up into the what we call the resting position. And then I left and walked back down to the office. And then the EMTs picked her up from there and took her out. His thing is he didn't want no heat. He didn't give a shit about her.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that now shows that the main reason that people who witness an overdose don't call 911 is that they're afraid of legal consequences for doing so. So a number of states have now passed what are called 911 Good Samaritan laws, which remove the possibility of most criminal penalties for people who call 911 to save somebody's life.
Good Samaritan laws make a lot of sense. I think it's exciting to see that there's Republican governors moving forward with Good Samaritan laws because they make sense. It is helpful in reframing the conversation about drug use. It reframes it so we're talking about a public health approach rather than an incarceration approach.
Drug overdose affects people from all walks of life. It's oftentimes not sort of the stereotypical problematic drug user from after-school specials. In fact, the mean person who is dying of drug overdoses in the United States is a 45-year-old white man, and he has died from an overdose of prescription pills, prescription medication. But it affects people from all walks of life. It affects older people who have multiple prescriptions. It affects middle-aged people who have pain from chronic back problems or acute surgery. It affects young people, so throughout the spectrum.
The trends and what we have seen from the data out of the Centers for Disease Control and other sources is that prescription drug use and overdoses have absolutely skyrocketed. So I think it is fair to say that there is an issue and that we need to pay attention to it.
I've been knowing people who have overdosed for 40 years now. And I think what we sort of get into in the world of harm reduction is like, yeah, we have this intervention, we have NARCAN, we have education, we know about rescue breathing, we know you shouldn't use drugs alone, you shouldn't, with bathrooms shouldn't be locked, or, you don't drink alcohol with it. But there will always be accidents and there will always be tragedies when you're using a drug which you can die from, and it's not even about the purity or the strength or knowing what you put in your body, because if that were true, then we wouldn't have overdoses from prescription drugs as well. That it's a biological fact of life that if you put certain drugs into your body, you could end up dying, and so what we need to work on is how to reduce. We're never going to eliminate, I don't think. And I think for those of us that sort of were involved in the AIDS epidemic at its height, and we had so many people we knew that died young and unnecessarily, and you put on top of that people who die of drug overdoses, there's this enormous amount of trauma within our community, I think. And I personally find that that when I lose a friend or a colleague, that the impact on me is it's tremendous. It doesn't get easier. It's not just a fact of life. It gets harder, I think, because every single moment of grief that I experience around losing a friend is magnified by all the other people that I've lost over the years. And personally, I don't know, if I'm to speak about it in different forums, I have no idea whether I'm going to break down and just sob and cry, or whether I can get through that situation. When someone dies young, you've lost so much potential, you've lost so much joy, you've lost so much living, and you've lost a colleague, and you've lost a friend, you've lost a loved one, and it's just, death is a final thing. You're not going to get that back.